Now then, everyone, welcome to the Wedding Mavericks podcast with me, Lindsay, and Jules. A podcast for wedding videographers and photographers where we discuss all aspects of running a business, developing technical knowledge and skills, and pushing your creativity. Before we start today's episode, if you're finding the podcast useful and you're enjoying it, we would love it if you could take a minute, please, to either review a podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever it is that you're listening to us, and share it on your socials or with a friend who you think might well be interested or learn from this or appreciate it. This will help us to grow the community and help more people build successful and sustainable wedding photo and video businesses. These episodes, of course, are always on YouTube. So if you want to watch us, and we know that some of you do, so thank you for tuning in on there. Please just search also on YouTube for Wedding Mavericks.
Bonus. So we're having a pretty exciting week. So we've launched our new branding and website. The website's probably the bigger part because the branding we've kind of had for a while, haven't we? Whereas the website's just been finished. So that's what you've heard us banging on about it a couple of times on what we've been up to this week, and kind of we've talked about the people that are helping us with the website. So it looks amazing, it really does, and it's so much more professional than the one that we've had for the last 5 years, which we kind of did ourselves. Well, I did it, but I'm not a web designer, and I'm not I'm not any kind of design. I mean, it's just not my forte. So you know, it's a big step up for us. Helps us to take things in a much more professional and solid foundation. Foundation was the word I was looking for. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to check that out, because obviously we've been talking about that a little bit. If you want to check that out at yourstorystudios.co.uk. And our podcast sponsor, Divine, are behind all this. Later in the year, we hope to do kind of an episode where we discuss the process of going through the branding and the design and the website build with them. But we also wanted to kind of discuss the outcomes of investing in the branding and website as part of our business. So rather than just talk about it now, it'd be better to talk about it few months down the road, back end of the year, when we've had enough time to kind of develop some understanding of how it's improved the business. We've got some data, some feedback, and some long-term experience of how it's changed usage and things like that. So we'll plan to do that and hopefully get Divine involved somewhere down the line to talk about things from their perspective as well. But we just wanted to mention that before we go into today's content. And if you're looking for help with your branding, your website, or any other aspects of design, get in touch with Divine Studios, mention Wedding Mavericks, get a 10% discount on the services. Their link is in the show notes. Thanks to Divine for sponsoring the podcast and our amazing new branding and website.
Thank you. Okay, so today we are discussing the opportunity, and that's exactly what it is, the opportunity to be able to shoot both film and photograph at weddings.
Film, I mean video. This is one of those words. No, it's just a funny word. I say film, I say film as well, and I think a lot of people say film, but I always kind of, I think of people, when you say film, some people, if they're a bit older as well, they'll be like, what, like you're shooting on a film camera and a digital camera? So sometimes that term can be a bit confusing for people. Okay. No, you can use the word film and photo. Okay. Because that's what we call it. Yeah. Okay. I'm just clarifying that for anyone listening.
Oh my gosh. So
just shut up and drink my coffee.
Yeah, no. But I mean, so okay, even just having to, in clarifying that, you're doing that because in its own right, calling it film, calling it video, shooting photo and video,
shooting
and film.
It might sound like you've got a gun, might it?
Gosh. Okay, word police.
No, but I use the term shooting as well, so it's all right.
So that in its own right, it can be mixed with, it can be subject to mixed reviews.
Yeah.
Is what I was trying to say. Some people in the industry do feel strongly, quite passionately, that those things are two separate disciplines in their own right. Disciplines, crafts, specialisms, and they should be kept separate. So I think this will be quite an interesting one to kind of gauge opinion on, and definitely, and just as we sort of said at the beginning, not just a case of wanting to hear what you've got to say from a review perspective so that we get an understanding whether or not you're finding this useful. But, in terms of the practice of what you're actually doing as well, share with us, is this something that you are currently doing, you're thinking about doing in the future? You are not thinking of doing it because you are one of the professionals that's of the belief that these are two separate things and should be kept separate. We really would, genuinely would love to hear about why there are for and against in this, I think. It's something, as you know, we've been in business now for 5 years, and I would say that doing both of them is something that we've done for the majority of that time. Yep. Not every single wedding. At this point today, it's between about a third and half of all the weddings that we do will be photo and video. I remembered. We of course started our business just in delivering wedding videos, and this has always been our main product, if you like. That's always been the service, the main service, the video that we've provided, because we do love that, and we do strongly believe that everyone should invest in a wedding film.
Yeah.
We did, even 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It was completely different, but even then, I think the one thing that you will not escape from over time is the value that a wedding film, wedding video will give you in terms of being able to re-immerse yourself in what that day was and the people that were there with you to celebrate that and make those memories with you.
Yeah. And without going on to a completely different topic, which would be like more, why is video so important, which we can do in another podcast. But, for me, if people think that photography is essential to a wedding, as in not many people, especially if they're having a big wedding and spending a lot of money on it, they don't typically not have a photographer. Mm-hmm. So for me, at this point, yes, I understand 20 years ago it might have been different, but at this point, I don't understand why video isn't as just an automatic given, just like photography. And it should be. And that is a personal opinion, but I can back that up and we can talk about that in another podcast. But also, I think in the future it will be.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at whatever your true feelings and things are on doing both photo and video together and offering them both as a service, whether you're a photographer or a videographer, I think the reality is video is going to become more important to people, and it's probably the biggest change. It's going to be the biggest change in the industry. It already is. If you look at what's happening with Instagram and everything, and TikTok and just YouTube in general, how people consume video content now, it is going to be the biggest change to the industry, sort of for like 20, 30 years. This next few years, that everything's going to move towards video. So if you've been resisting using video, even if it's just your own video to use on social media or on online somewhere, by resisting it, you've got potential of missing out on a lot of opportunity.
There's certainly been a change in tone, hasn't there? Even just in our 5 years, from day one, the feeling definitely was the essentials are venue, photographer, wedding dress, and on from there. And the wedding video.
Call it film.
It was if there's enough money left in the budget, that was the luxury, that if there's enough money left, then we might have a film.
And people just didn't. Again, we are sort of going down that rabbit hole a bit much now, talking about why video is important, but it was very different, wasn't it? 15, 20 years ago, you couldn't get the same sort of, you didn't have the variety, you didn't have the people weren't out there making creative wedding films. Yeah. If you had a video of your wedding, it was just to document, to document the day.
Yeah. But like I said, so just in our time trading those.
So even in 5 years, it's massively changed. Yeah.
Yeah. So in what you were saying, you're quite right, because the needs of the clients has changed.
Yes.
And I know we'll kind of come on to it, but I think photographers have recognised that. Some photographers have recognised that in more recent years. That's
going to become a demand.
Yeah.
And so before we actually go into all this conversation, just to kind of frame your mind in the right place while you're listening to it, we talk, every podcast comes back to business. And the reason is that's because we're in business. We're trying to kind of make a living from this. This isn't just a hobby. So if you're thinking about it as something that's, providing your income, you need to be less emotionally connected to what you think is the right thing or the wrong thing, what you'd like to be doing, what your artistic feelings towards it are. It has to be more a case of what is the commercial viability. And we will discuss that as we're going through this episode. So, background research. I'm not going to dwell on this too much. I'm going to fly through it. But I wanted to mention it because rather than just giving you opinions and you've been like, well, that's just their opinion, I wanted to provide a bit of context to that. And it's interestingly, I have the perfect context. So, over the last sort of few years, Lindsay and I both went to university we didn't get degrees when we were younger. We didn't go to university when we were younger because we joined the police. So when we left the police and we started our business, we also did university courses. And as part of that, as a part of an honours degree, you have to do a dissertation. So you have to do a boring research project. And I decided as part of mine, because I was doing about media and photography, that I would do something that would potentially help me understand business opportunities better. So I kind of did a bit of research that was relevant to the business. So I did my dissertation was on, I can't remember the title of it and I haven't written it down, but basically it was are photography and videography still separate skills and art forms in the creative industry, from a commercial perspective. So we're not talking about making art pieces. We're not talking about making a film, a movie or a photo that you're going to sell in a gallery. We're talking about like selling it to a client, which is effectively what we're doing with weddings, isn't it? It's like being hired by a company to do their business, to do their photo or video work, but you're being hired by a client. So even though we have got a bit more creative control over that and everything, it is essentially that's what we're doing. So it's a commercial enterprise. So I will upload the dissertation and link it in the show notes in case anybody can be bothered to read it. I don't expect there will be anyone, but if you want sort of if you want the hard facts, the results of the research, if you like, it's in there. And I kind of in that, I looked into historically what happened with photo and video, how it all came about from way back at its inception, right to kind of through the 90s and 2000s. And it's always, photography and videography filmmaking, it's always been heavily influenced and affected by technology and commercial opportunities. So it's about kind of what is possible and what makes money. So I discussed that in the dissertation, and then I do some primary research, which is basically asking peers or consumers what their views on the difference between photo and video are at this point. And I did this back in 2000, so it's very recent. So here's some quick stats. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go through every single thing that we talked about, but just quick stats. So from a consumer perspective, 77.5% believe photo and video are separate skills. Yeah. 91.2% believe someone can be competent at both, which is higher than I expected. 55% would prefer the same people to be doing both. 42.5% they don't mind the same person doing both as long as they were satisfactory at doing them together. And only 2.5% said that they would want separate companies who are specialised in just one. So interesting. There was well over 100. I can't remember I think it was 130 odd people responded to this survey. Wow. Now, yes, it's not going to be the biggest cross section of society because I'm doing it through my own kind of social media and things like that. But, there's going to be, with over 100 people, there's going to be quite a variety of opinions there. So, if you look at that, that's telling you that 90% of people don't really have an issue with the same person doing both. Mm-hmm. So, just purely from like a consumer perspective, if you think of it like that, they're not bothered. They if there's a good reason for them to hire the same person to do both, then they would. And a very small 2.5%, which is pretty much nothing, think that they should be kept separate. So that's from a consumer perspective. So if you're thinking about your business. So from a practitioner perspective, so this was a survey, it was smaller numbers that responded, but it was still sort of 30 or 40, I think, the exact numbers in the dissertation. So 82.1% said that someone could be a photographer and a videographer. So again, quite a high number. 60.7% believed the same person could do both on the same project at the same time, which was higher than I was expecting also. 78.5% said that they believe that photography and filmmaking, videography are still separate art forms and skills. Okay. So whilst they believe that they're still separate, they believe the majority believe that the same person can do both on the same project. Mm-hmm. So if we take a wedding, 60.7% of the people believe that you could do both. So we're in quite a good place, really, if you're actually thinking about doing both. You've got your consumers, that seems to be what they would want. Mm-hmm. And actually practitioners are starting to believe that that's possible and that's the way it's going. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of... I wanted to provide that context because otherwise it could just sound like the stuff we're talking about in here is just our own experience because that's what we've been doing. And some people might be like, well, that's just you. Yeah. But, as part of that research, I also found people to interview in more depth to get deeper opinions on things. So I sat down with someone who is primarily a videographer, wedding videographer, and someone who's primarily a wedding photographer but also does some videography. Both had experience of photography as well, and to get their deeper views. And one was more of the view that they should be kept separate, and one was more of the view that they should be done together, or they can be done together. Yeah. So I also got a deeper understanding of that from other people. And that's also why we'd love to hear from you. So if you agree or disagree with any of the stuff that we're going to talk about in this episode, please just drop us a DM or something, because we'd love to get more understanding of this. Because it's almost like a market research, and that's kind of why I did the dissertation this way. It was market research for our own business, but dressed up in the form of a university project. So
that's actually, I'm quite surprised by that. That's more of a positive kind of
for doing it
feedback
together,
for doing it than I expected.
I think I was surprised at the time when I did it. Yeah,
I think maybe I see too many group chats,
negative
and things,
group comments about stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's changed though, isn't it? So anything where things change, think about our old job, think about in the industry. We only talked about this as part of last week's podcast, that people, they don't question why. They just follow, what they've kind of been told at some point. Even though things might change, they'll carry on doing it that way because generally people don't like change. And this is definitely one of those resist the change situations. Yeah. And at some point, it will potentially become the norm, and nobody will be resisting it anymore.
So then let's think about what things have changed, what has happened that might enable this then, or has enabled this kind of to change over time. So we know, and I know from last week's podcast, we spent a little bit of time talking about just the example that you were just giving, technology.
Yeah.
In its own right, the difference between a camera's capability now, the lenses that are available, the skill set that people have, and let's take the course even that you were on. That was
media and photography.
Yeah,
they didn't. And funnily enough, as part of the research I did, I actually sat down with my entire class, including all the tutors, and did like a focus group with them to gather their opinions about where they thought the industry had come from, where it was going. And that was the response of the lead tutor who actually kind of invented the course, because this course didn't exist anywhere else. It was just at this college.
Right.
So they created this course simply because they saw that the skill sets for photography and media production were kind of merging together.
Yeah.
And that somebody who wanted to work in this industry going forward would need both sets of skills. So therefore, it made sense to create a course where you could learn both.
Yeah. And that kind of leads nicely into the fact that there's the technology in its own right, and let's face it, manufacturers, so we're obviously Sony users. Sony won't be developing cameras and bringing out these new iterations of cameras and working with the technology to improve them in photo and video if there wasn't demand for it.
Exactly.
And so, even the manufacturers are seeing that there are shifts in industry as well. We'll talk about social media in a moment, but just that. So take the evolution from the technology, what we're seeing in education, to the industry then. So go back 5 or 6 years ago, would you have expected to go to university, or would you be expecting to kind of speak to your careers advisor in high school and talk about, I want to be a content creator?
Well, I don't even think that term existed until more recently.
Yeah. And so, in that profession, there is an expectation that the people involved in that are multi-skilled.
Yeah.
Because businesses who kind of embrace and they have a desire, they have a need for the services of content creators, they don't want Jules the content creator because you're going to do the video, and then next week they'll bring in Lindsay, the other content creator, who just specialises in photo. Not at all how it works.
No.
It's multidisciplinary.
Yep.
So with that, as professionals then, we're expected to have numerous skills, a cross-section of skills in both the photo and the video, as opposed to just being good at one.
Yeah.
That's not saying for a second that there aren't people who just want to bring in a professional to do video and to do film and sound or just photograph. But it's kind of, our eyes have surely been open to the fact that professions have changed and new professions have emerged that require more than one skill set.
Yeah.
And that's a great example, is the content creation that you'd put down.
Yeah, and if we kind of to go back to maybe like that wouldn't have been possible say 20 years ago, 25 years ago, simply because the technology, the equipment that you would use to do photography and the equipment you would use to make films or do video work were very different pieces of equipment. They required different understandings to operate them. They required different support equipment to make that possible. Processing, being able to post-process things, whether it be photos, whether it be on, film, a dark room, or sending off to a lab, or, the editing software that was around 20, 25 years ago was completely different, night and day different to what there is now. So it's because of those transformations in and advances in technology that the equipment we use to actually capture images and the equipment we use to be able to process or support that process of creating photographs or films has changed drastically. So, if you've still got a mindset of they are separate, then we're not saying that there aren't situations where they should be separate. Like if we're making a Hollywood movie,
No, of course not.
But in kind of a commercial term, there is no reason to keep them separate anymore, because you can do everything on one device with one set of equipment, with one computer. One little laptop can have all the software you need to do everything that you could possibly need to do.
And that's, that shift in kind of the introduction of the professions, the education that's been built around it. You've seen it in youth thing now in the UK. So we had A levels, but now there are T levels, and there are digital technology-based T levels that are based all around professions such as this, where students will learn to use camera technology, editing software, multi-purpose for a number of different reasons, and that there has to be a reason behind that. But to then just sort of double up on that with going back to social media, let's face it, there's been this gigantic behavioural change in society because of social media. And your clients now, whether this is a business client that you do create content for, because that's another element of work that you're involved in outside of weddings, whether it is your wedding clients, we've all got a mobile phone, we're all users of social media, we all take videos, take photographs on our phones to use on social media. And even our 11-year-old daughter, who just got a phone this year, one of the first apps that she wanted to download was something called CapCut. Why? Because she wants to make her own films and integrate her own photographs onto an editing timeline and create something that she wants to make for her friends. From such a young age, right across the different kind of age demographics that we've got, there has been this huge societal change in people's behaviours and appetite for film and photo combined. What can I do mixing those together, and how, they're just part of daily life now, aren't they?
Yeah.
And so if as professionals
we can't embrace that, then what we're gonna be left behind by our customers, because they're actually moving forward faster than we are. So I think it's safe to say then, as if that's what people can do just on their smartphones, just for fun, just for hobbies, just to put a little compilation together of a holiday that they've just been on, something so simple as that. Why wouldn't they want to see a similar service delivered by professionals, either for their wedding day or to help their business if they're involved in business in their own right? Absolutely. So if we move on from kind of the why to the how, let's talk about offering the way that you can offer them. And so you could offer these services separately, couldn't you?
Yep,
so you could
absolutely.
be both a photographer, professional wedding photographer, and a professional wedding videographer. You could do both of those services and offer those services, but you could do them completely separately. So you could draw a line and say, well, I'm not comfortable doing both of them at the same time. I don't feel confident doing that, or I don't feel like I'm going to produce the work that I want to be able to produce if I'm having to focus on the two things at the same time. I'll keep them separate and people can hire me to do either one. And, that kind of makes sense because if you like doing both, it keeps things interesting for you because 1 week... And this is kind of, we do a mixture, don't we? We do some where we're doing both together. We do some where we're just doing photo, and we do some where we're just doing video. And I love that. I do think that keeps things interesting, and it gives you different days. And I'll tell you that it certainly makes the days where you're just doing one or the other. It makes you appreciate those days because you're sort of like, well, I feel like I've got all the time in the world. This feels a lot easier.
And then those edits.
Yeah, and those edits, because obviously you're not editing 2 lots of stuff, you're only editing 1. So, yeah, it gives you the freedom to keep things interesting, and it can make you actually, doing it like that, can make you really good to work alongside, because I know that we always, I'd like to think that we always work really well with a photographer if we're doing video alongside them, because we are thinking about what that photographer needs to do their job. And we're helping them, we're assisting them where we can, even if it's down to kind of helping them organise people or helping them carry things or whatever, however
holding
we
up
can.
A light when there's 2 of us, holding up a light so that the 2 of you can do a sparkler tunnel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's good light standards, Lindsay.
Strong arms.
Yeah, so that's your bicep workout for the day, isn't it? So, we can do them separately and it makes you good to work with. So, on the flip side, you could do them together. And I know that, the idea for some people, the idea of doing them together might be like, it's a big enough job doing one or the other on a wedding day because some people are really comfortable at weddings. Some people actually find them really stressful because, they might do it for a living. It might be their job. Maybe you're early on in your career with it, or maybe you're just always a little bit kind of anxious when it comes to the fact that there's pressure. You don't want to get it wrong, and they move very quick at certain points to wedding days. So some people might think the idea of doing both together, whoa, but that you don't have to do that. That's why we're saying you can do them separately, do them together. If you're going to do them together, we'll talk about the different ways in which the levels, if you like, which you could do this. So a light version of doing video and photo together could be you're a photographer, you've been doing that a while, and you think, I'm going to add video, highlight films, or, little music videos into what I offer. This is probably the most popular thing that we're seeing at the moment. I'd say this is the thing that seems to get most videographers' noses put out of joint, really. Because it's almost like I think some videographers might feel that the photographers are coming in and offering this thing that is actually, it's purporting itself to be videography, but it's not. It's not, it's not the same as what they would do if they were doing the job themselves. So that's the bit I think that's if we talk about kind of tension, I think that's creating the most tension in the industry at the moment. And it doesn't need to, because as long as like the couples are getting educated by people, which is maybe what the issue is, that they're not being educated. But if they're educated to say, look, I'm not replacing the videographer, I'm doing this. But at the same time, if the couple just want a nice kind of montage and they don't want anything complex, not bothered about audio recording, they're not bothered about full ceremony speech edits, things like that, or like doc edits, then actually, yeah, why not? I think from my own perspective, because we want to give our personal views on it as well, I think the main issue with what's happening with that at the moment is pricing. I think some photographers are adding that on too cheap, and that will kind of skew things because I think that they'll realise that's a lot of work, and they're not charging enough for it. You know, it's a lot of extra time editing, and they're not charging enough for it.
And I think we kind of saw a lot of that emerging, didn't we, during the last 2 years? And I dare say that actually not just inspired, not as, let me think, not just as a method of kind of diversification in what they're doing because of the pandemic. I think even in 2019, there were photographers who were talking about introducing, or who had already been offering these short highlight films, like you say. And so I think as well, there's so much happening in terms of sort of people's available disposable income, and certainly over the next sort of couple of years, I think those photographers that kind of were more forward thinking, future facing, could see that maybe they needed to look for opportunities to diversify the service, to kind of enhance the service that they were offering a little bit. And so that's what they did. But like you said, maybe not perhaps realising, when it comes to booking, brilliant, that's an extra £500, £400 on top of what I've got. The reality then, when those weddings come round, and it's not just a set of photographs that you're needing to plough through and get edited and delivered to your couples, you've now got this film to incorporate into it as well. So it's increasing their workload as well.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to kind of see where that goes in the future, and if that pattern still remains. But I think you're absolutely right. Maybe I think what photographers were doing, they're certainly undervaluing.
Yeah.
What they're doing in that respect. And I can see that for some videographers, the issue with it is it's perceived as you're undercutting us.
Well, it's perceived as like replacing what they do, but for like a hell of a lot cheaper.
Lot less.
It isn't replacing it, and that's why, as wedding videographers, as the wedding videographer community, they shouldn't feel like threatened by that, because it isn't replacing them. I understand why it feels like that, because they're not offering the same thing necessarily, and they're, anyway,
it's just easy to look at it on the surface, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of, highlights film, because that's often what it's called.
Yeah.
When it's an add-on to the photography package, and it's a few £100s. And so I see, without kind of looking at examples of what that is, and maybe thinking, right, so that's
comparing that to that, because if the consumer doesn't properly look into it, and say, let's, look at that and compare them, they don't really know the difference. They think they're getting some kind of bargain that means they don't really need a videographer. And obviously it would be very awkward if the videographer and the photographer was doing some kind of video, and then the videographer was doing a video. Yeah, that'd be weird. And let's hope the industry doesn't end up like that. But who knows? So that's kind of doing them the light version, if you like. Then there's a full version. So this is where, like what we've kind of been doing for quite some time, is offering a full photography and videography service, including kind of audio recording, longer edits like a doc edit, or the full ceremony speeches edits, things like that. Because effectively what we're doing is recording the day totally in full, as you would as a videographer, and we're doing the photography as well. And we can talk about, we'll move on to how you do that in a few minutes, but essentially you are doing both services, so that person can hire just one team or one person to do both. And then there's the other side, which is just worth mentioning, because I've seen this come up as like a thing occasionally, and this can definitely cause some issues. And again, I don't know how I personally feel about it, but I sort of think I've never been in that situation, so I can't comment. But videographers who will take a load of film stills and start posting them or sharing them with the couple, and kind of almost encroaching on the photographer's thing. And I can see both sides of that. I can see that no harm, no foul if you're being open, honest and saying these are frames taken from the video. They're not, I wasn't the photographer on this day.
Yeah.
I'm not the photographer. I'm not a photographer or whatever. I can see that that's cool if you're just using it for your own purposes, like to kind of pad out your gallery that you're going to send to the couple, or, you know, to put on your social media, things like that. That's fine. But if you're taking some stills and then posting them to the couple or posting them on social media before the photographer has got their previews or whatever out, that's, you know, you're asking for trouble. You're asking for a fight, aren't you? You know what I mean? Starting something that you don't want to be doing. But it's worth talking about because it's something that is more possible now with the high quality video that we've got. You know, we've all got the cameras that can record 4K or even higher 8K, and the stills that you can take from them are passable. Maybe not hung on a massive wall, but, you know, they're passable. So it's something that has started to happen over the last few years and could become a thing. Who knows? We'll move on to the ways in which you can do this. The how. So it's like, you know, again, we won't go massively into it, but you could do this as a solo shooter. So I would say I know of other photographers / videographers who have shot weddings solo where they're doing the photo and the video. And we have done this, or I have done this at a few weddings. Usually smaller weddings, where there weren't as many guests. The timeline was a bit, more protracted. It wasn't kind of all condensed into one. I had a lot more time to get things done. And yeah, in that situation, I feel like I did a decent job. I feel like the product that came out of the other end of it, I don't think anything suffered. I don't think I missed anything. I don't feel like it was far below what I could do if I was focusing just on photo or video. But at the same time, if you got a wedding where you've got, 100 to 200 guests and you are moving around from church to this location to that location, and there's a lot going on, you're not going to provide the same thing as if you had a dedicated photographer and a dedicated videographer. No,
too much going on there.
Yeah,
too much.
That's me talking about solely on my own, providing photo and video, doing full ceremony edit with audio, full speeches edit with audio, first dance with audio, and doing all the photos as well, including group shots, portraits, the full shebang, on my own. We've got quite a few cameras, that's why we can do it. So that's kind of one option, but that's a very stressful option. Then there's the kind of hire someone else as an associate shooter, or a second shooter. But if you're focusing on the video or the photo and they're doing the other, they're not really a second shooter, are they? They should be getting paid for fully shooting the wedding. And obviously they handle one side of the gig. So maybe you're a photographer and you think, I'm either going to team up with a videographer and we're going to do it together, or I'm going to, but then it is just two businesses purporting to be one, aren't they? It's not the same as what we're talking about, but there is one way of doing it. And then, the other way of doing it is to hire someone to come in and help you by shooting one aspect of it.
Yeah.
And then there is the way that we do it, where we're fortunate to be, in a relationship and we work together. So we shoot most of our weddings together, and we'll talk about how we do that in a second. But that is basically like having a photographer and a videographer working together, but we both shoot both. And it works really well, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, quickly we'll go through downsides, negative perceptions. So I think the main thing, and again, some of this is related back to the research that we talked about earlier, are you going to be able to deliver a good product? Is something going to suffer? They're different art forms, they require different approaches. I do that is something that came up, and that's what people feel is the case. They feel that there is a difference between taking a good photo and capturing a good video clip. I agree to an extent, but I also think that they share the same principles. And if you learn the principles, you can apply them to both in the correct way. You know, for instance, there's a lot of points, not every single shot, but there's a lot of points of the day where we'll both do this, won't we? We'll be capturing something, we'll video clip for 10, 20 seconds, stop the video, take a photo of exactly the same thing. You know, they both look like good images. They both work for the video and the photos looks good too. Yeah. So if you understand lighting and composition and you get into a place where you're consistent with the way that you're capturing both. So for instance, you can't use flash when you're using video. So if you get used to using natural light, or you get used to using constant LEDs or something, you can capture the same thing, exactly the same, and it still looks good. Doing one is definitely easier as a practitioner, so that's a downside. And you know, people might feel a bit overwhelmed by it all. If you were going to actually try this, I'd never try it as a solo shooter for the first time you do it. Let's put it that way. Definitely have at least one person, maybe two, maybe have a team of 3 of you to go and do it. And you're gonna handle both the photo and video, but you're gonna delegate tasks to people so that you're not having to do everything yourself. Yeah. I'd say I wouldn't have shot a solo wedding doing this until I was much more comfortable with it.
No, much more. Whichever your kind of native discipline is, you know, it started with that. Wait until you've gained some experience doing the other.
Definitely.
If you're a photographer, make sure that you've been gradually building up your experience doing a little bit of video work, bit of the editing, and then start to integrate that into a service that you're offering and what you're doing for people, because like you say, that's something that could quickly get overwhelming and you've just then the results compromised on the standard of work that you're producing.
Yeah, and you just touched on that as well, because we've been focusing on the wedding day, but the post-production is very much, you know, that's a big place where things can unravel. Yeah. So you need to feel comfortable before you try it on your own. Yeah. Which won't be for everyone, and also before you start taking on volume of doing these. Yeah. Because like we've said in previous podcast episodes, you know, last year we between July and December we had 40 odd weddings, but I think about 13 or 14 of them were photo and video in that time. And it pushes you basically up to editing 50 to 60 weddings, which, you know, was a as well as everything else that was happening and we were dealing with. Yeah. So some upsides and positive perceptions of doing this. So the first one, if we're focusing on the customer and the client, it's better for the couple in a lot of respects. Yeah. Why? It's less stressful for them. There's less unknowns on the day. And, you know, for you, there's less stress and unknowns because you're not working with somebody you don't know or anything like that. You're kind of more in control of things.
Couple are just dealing with one.
Couple are just dealing with one person, yeah.
If you think about that list of suppliers that they're dealing with in planning for their wedding and all the different amounts that need to go to different places, all those phone calls as you lead up to the wedding, different people that you need to have, that's one less.
Just one person, yeah. And there's not going to be any difference of approach or opinion on stuff, so it's just nice and straightforward for them. Not that there is a lot of difference of opinion usually on a wedding day, but it can happen depending on who you're working with. So it's kind of the money side as well. So if we look at it from the client's perspective, you might be able to offer those services, you know, both services together slightly cheaper. We'll talk about why in a second, but they might get a slightly better deal, which means their budget might go a little bit further. So that's a positive thing for them. For us, in terms of the money, we might be able to offer that service slightly less than if we were just offering one or the other. because we've only got one set of business costs. So we're already running our business. We're already paying for all our subscriptions and all the costs that are coming out, the travel costs and everything. We're not having to pay for any of that. So it's actually, whichever way you look at it, whether you look at it of, well, I can increase my profit margins, or whether you can pass some of that saving on to the client, it is more cost effective for the client, and it's going to potentially, not only are you now offering 2 services instead of 1, so you can charge for both services, you're not going to have as many costs associated to all that. So in general, your business will be potentially in better shape from doing both. And hopefully that leads to you being able to make more per wedding and therefore do fewer weddings.
Do fewer, yeah.
Which, better quality of life and everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
So essentially, there's a lot more people starting to do this. What we've seen over the last few years is more people are starting to offer. There's more businesses, more companies offering both photography and videography, and they're all doing it in different ways. Some of them are teaming up, like we've mentioned. Some of them are trying to do it by themselves. Some of them are building teams. However you sort of do it, as long as the output for the customer's good, it doesn't really matter, does it? So let's talk about our experiences, Linz.
Yeah. I mean, it's, touch wood, it remains that way. In the time that we've been offering film and photo, the service that's been provided, the end product that the clients have received, it's been well received by them, and it's gone well for us. It's a tough day, it's a hard working day.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, like we've talked about, the kind of post-production on that as well. But as you've also said, we're fortunate because that's shared.
Yeah.
And
it is now.
I think it is now. Yeah.
It wasn't last year.
It wasn't. No. That's very true. Yeah, I was away doing other
last
things.
year was all me. Not that it's caused some scars or anything.
Yeah. No. You don't keep bringing it up. No. Now it's more shared than it was, and in our experience, I suppose, and again, this is just for us. Your circumstances, the way that you work, and who you will work with, may be different. But thankfully, today, it's something that we've now integrated further into our business, and we see a future in delivering. Because it's been well received. Yeah. And because we've continued to kind of learn more about doing this and try and improve. Refining
the processes of how we do things on the day, after the day, how we deliver things to clients. So, yeah. Yeah.
And I think in terms of sort of the practicality of doing it on the day, you have mentioned a little bit about it, but on a wedding where it's film and photograph, Jules, you'll focus on doing the photographs for the day, and I'll focus more on doing the filming, and we're not rigid in that. It flows nicely because although we will have a priority, if you like, it doesn't mean that if you're taking some nice photographs of some nice moments, candid stuff, people at the drinks reception or whatever it might be, you're not going to think, right, well, I'm not getting a video of this. Lindsay's not here, she's off doing something else. So, she's elsewhere. She's indoors doing details or whatever. I'm not going to take a video. No, come on. Because of the way that the cameras are set up and how we use them, you'll quickly switch it to film and vice versa. Yep. And just if we took then, another example, let's take the portraits. In the group shops, as an example for through the day, you will be taking the images of those, and I'm just candidly getting a few kind of clips of the different groups, the group setups and things like that, and what other people are doing sort of during the drinks reception. But again, if I'm spotting any moments where I think, well, it'd be nice to have a photograph of that, but Jules is down there and he's with other people.
Yeah, so if someone comes up to you and says, can you take a photo with me and Aunt Betty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As is always happened. Yeah, definitely. I'm not going to say, oh, no, sorry.
I'm the filmmaker, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what happens a lot at weddings when you're holding a little Sony mirrorless camera. You look like a photographer, and someone comes up to you and wants a photo, and you have to say, I'm the videographer. I'll get the photographer for you. Because, like, you know, but like we don't have that issue when we're doing this, do we?
No, and we kind of structure the day where if you start from prep, then so you'll drop me off at the bride with the bride most of the time, or it will be with one person in the couple, and you will go to the other one, and then also the venue as well. And again, we're doing both. We're switching between film and photo. And it's just one extra person in the room or at the place, isn't it, with the person that's getting married that day. So
yeah, so it's not like you've got a photographer and a videographer going and being in the room all the time.
No.
Or being around.
Yeah.
Lindsay in prep will be getting photo and video, and I will be getting photo and video with the person I'm with, and usually I've got time to do other bits as well.
Yeah. And then we'll come together again for the wedding ceremony, as we are for then the speeches, the first dance, things like that. We break it down so that just like when you've got a separate photographer and videographer, you're going to have one person at the front. In a ceremony, you're going to have one person at the back. And that's how we do it. And we'll have 2 static cameras set up, one at the front, one at the back, and we'll both have a camera to take images as well.
Yeah.
And it's a terrific sort of...
so at that point, it is like you've got a team of 4 people, but there's just 2 of us.
That's it. And we just hear so much now how important to whomever it is that's walking down the aisle to greet their partner, the one walking down the aisle, more than ever. Because
the focus is always on them.
Yeah.
And they want to see the reaction.
They want to see the reaction, yeah. And so that's a massive priority and a big, big focus for us, and the reason why we make sure that the front and the back is covered so that we are getting both reactions in film and photo for them. Yeah. And yeah, we've just developed kind of sort of processes and the ways that we do things. We've just developed it so that although we try to kind of approach it with minimal equipment, there are parts of the day where we will need, whether it's just tripods, whether it's the sound equipment that for audio, or whether it might be a bit of lighting. We've got that equipment with us. We've got it ready with us, should we need it.
Yeah.
And I think we've just got to, we've gone through phases of, turning up like Tackleberry with all the...
I don't think we ever did do that, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, but you know what I mean, loads of equipment and things like that. And just over time, the more sort of experience that we've gained...
No one's going to know what that is, are they?
No, that's true. So just turning up laden down with bags and equipment and lights and stands and all the rest of it. But I think as we've gained more experience in doing the film and photo together, we've been able to see where, well, that's just never used. That's just a bit excessive. If we're trying to remain true to being discreet, not obtrusive towards a couple, let's scale it back. What can we work with that's still going to produce really good results for us, but it's nice and minimal.
What do we need essentially?
Yeah.
And what is like might use that every now and then.
Yeah.
So Lindsay's kind of talked there about like what the day typically looks like. So I'll kind of go through a little bit more about the equipment and the way that's integrated into what we do. Before I do that, it's important to mention about timing, anticipation, and planning and organisation. So if you're going to try and do photo and video together, everyone's got a different level of organisation on the wedding day. Some people don't know what's going on and they just wing it, and some people have more organisation. We found that it's really important to know what's happening when you're doing photo and video, just so that you're ready and you're prepared. And Lindsay's touched on the equipment. So, if we need to put cameras on tripods for the ceremony, but because we're doing the photo and we kind of, we're focusing on being there to make sure we get those photos, we need to think ahead for getting those tripods set up and getting the cameras ready to be put on the tripod, to film at the same time. Because that's our responsibility. There ain't another set of people doing that.
No.
So we have to be organised. We have to know what's happening when, and we have to be able to then pack up that equipment quite quickly as well.
Yeah.
And that's why you mentioned about as little equipment as possible, and knowing where you're going to store it, and knowing how you're going to, who's going to do it. So like one person at the end of the ceremony, for instance, will go outside and continue capturing things through both photo and video, and the other person will sort the equipment out. Yeah. So it's just having a plan like that, isn't it? We work handheld most of the time. So there's obviously going to be parts of the day where we will use other pieces of equipment like a tripod or a monopod, and we will need audio recorders and stuff. But essentially, I would say we take more equipment than the average photographer to a wedding, because we've got all the tripods and things. But in terms of what we carry, we keep most of it in the car. We get those bits out when we need them. And then the rest of the time, I literally have a satchel. You have a satchel, like a messenger bag. That's it. That's all we carry. And everything is in those messenger bags. So you've got what you need, usually a couple of cameras and some lenses and like batteries and stuff. And then I'll carry, my bag's a little bit bigger, and I'll carry 2 or 3 cameras and the audio equipment. And for most of the day, we're not going to need lighting, but I might have a flash in my bag as well, just so that if we're having to take photos and it's quite dark. But again, putting a speed light in your bag doesn't take up much space, so that's not really a big deal. So we can get all that stuff, can't we, in one bag, all the audio equipment, everything. And it's essential that you kind of know your equipment really well beforehand. So you want to be really comfortable with the settings. And 2 cameras is not going to be enough to do photo and video, I would say. No. I would say 3 is the minimum you can get away with doing a full photo. It depends. If you're doing highlight film, I'll just caveat that. If you're just doing a highlight film alongside your photography, 2 cameras is fine. If you're doing full ceremony, speeches, coverage, things like that, you're going to need at least 3 cameras. If you've got 4 or more, but even better. But 3 is the minimum. We use Sony cameras. We're not going to go into gear in this, but as well, there's a good reason we use those, and we find that they're really good for switching between photo and video. The way that we set them up, we can do that quickly. We have the settings in a way that, yes, you can set up memory functions, so you can switch on the dials between photo and video and things for doing different things. We have that set up, and we use those particularly when we're doing video. But actually, when we're doing photo and video, we pretty much record in the same format for everything. And when you're not recording, it's ready to fire the photos off. So there is no switching between settings. Yeah,
the simplicity in that, and that's just as we've got new cameras. That's thanks to you. We've gained
functionality of doing that,
yeah. But again, it's because of the change. Right from the manufacturers, they've built it in this way so that it's got
so you
that
can
function.
Do it, and it's testing different settings and being like, well, actually, we used to do it like this, but it's slightly quicker if we do it like that. So the setup, so that literally you are just pressing record or pressing the shutter button and getting photo or video. Lens choice is a huge one. We touched on zooms and versus primes in the last episode. Don't care. Doesn't matter what you use. You could use, if you like using primes, use primes. If you like using zooms, use zooms. There are certain things that you might be better off with a zoom lens for when you're doing photo and video, because you're just not going to have the flexibility with a prime lens. Doesn't mean you can't do that. Nope. It's just, it might be more helpful and easier for you if you've got that flexibility. But that's something to just consider. The microphones we use, we've got all sorts of different ones that we can use if in different situations. But the ones that we'll use 9 times out of 10 are the Sony TX650s, which everybody else in the videography world uses in the UK. And the reason is because they're so small and they're so easy to start, to press record and clip on. That's what we want. Simple. So yes, we could probably use something that would get slightly better audio results. But what we need is fast and efficient, easy to use, and not something that's going to put the couple off.
No.
Lighting, again, we'll carry a flash on us just in case we're in a situation where the photos are going to really suffer if we don't use lighting, but very rare that we need to use that during the day. And then in terms of the video stuff, if you work on the thing of I've got to do video and photo of this, so I will use natural light wherever possible, that helps. And then you're not relying on using flash. And then we do have different sets of constant LEDs that we can use. But apart from dance floor, we don't really use them. Might do some creative stuff with them in the evening. Again, LEDs are kind of not there yet replacing the flash, but they're getting there. And I would say that in the next 5 years, there won't be need to have 2 different sets of lights. I think the lights that you'll be able to get for video work the video lights will be so small and so powerful that you'll be able to do everything with just that light rather than having to use strobes or speed lights. Photo from video. So give you an example of something that we've used a few times. If you're in a particular situation where you're going to want a shot, for instance, of someone coming down the aisle, and you're at an angle where you can't really see them if you set the camera up on a tripod, so you'd need to get low or you'd need to be handheld or whatever. I've done it a couple of times, haven't I, where because one of the cameras we've got is a Sony A1, it shoots in 8K. You could get away with this with a 4K camera, I'd say. The photos might not be quite as good, but shooting 8K, someone walking down the aisle, we've taken stills from that. So we've basically got a really good piece of footage that we can use for the video, and then we've also got some frames from that look almost identical to what you'd get if you took a photo, especially once you've put the preset that we'd use and everything on it, because you're shooting in exactly the same colour profiles and everything with both. So, we've done that and we know that that's possible. So, look into the future. That's, you're not going to be able to do that all day. There's going to be certain situations, you're going to need to think about your shutter speed and your frame rate and everything, but it's possible to do that. So, and yeah, printing in like a large format, still jury's still out on that. Still need to keep testing with that because there's a lot of variables. Yeah. So, to conclude, where's it going? What do you think, Lynn? That's a long pause. I'm going to fill it.
I think, I've a photographer in mind at the moment that I know that you've spoken to recently who said that they might just move away from photography completely into video, but that's because they kind of have that previous experience as well. So do I see that the two together will become more of a thing? I think that will be down to personal preference of the photographer and videographer. And I think it will be informed by where you currently sit on the fence with that. I think what your previous kind of professional background is, whether the photo or the video is something that you have always done, and how strongly that you feel that they are two separate disciplines that should remain so. I think for me, it's a really positive thing that the kind of stats that you shared at the beginning.
Well, what do you think about the consumer?
Because for the consumer, just all day long, because you only have to put yourselves in the shoes of, you just have to take your wedding photographer, videographer hat off for a moment and think, well, if I'm getting married,
if you got married again, if you divorced me and got married again, would you hire someone to do
if I was confident, you know, if I chose someone and I was confident in having seen enough of their work to know that they could do both on the day, then I think that would be great. I think that would be a great thing to do, to either have one person or a team of people that are able to do both of them. And the reason why is because of the consistency that I'll see across the work.
Yeah.
And like you say, from a consumer's kind of perspective, maybe they're able to gain more value for money in having a combination of the two that's supplied by one person. I think definitely
I think for me, you know, I'd want the fewer people. I think I when we go to a wedding, you know, if someone's hired both of us just to do video, how awkward do you feel now when there's two photographers and two of us? Like it does feel weird,
in those,
doesn't
like,
it?
quieter moments of the day.
Yeah.
When
most of the day
because you know we'll you know say, oh, let's just go sit in the car for a few minutes, you know, because that kind of, particularly after the meal's finished and it's sort of downtime. Yeah. Yeah, so you don't want to be, or I just feel really uncomfortable because we're so consciously kind of, our whole thing is about being discreet, blending into the background, and if it's just naturally a quieter part of the day, everyone's stuffed.
There's times where people, you know, they don't mind being taking the photos and being filmed when there's an atmosphere, but when there isn't really anything happening, there's nobody dancing, there's nobody really, they're just trying to have a quiet conversation. It can feel really awkward.
Yeah.
With you when you, even if you've not picked your camera up and if they know you're there, you're thinking
they're not relaxed, and you're kind of thinking, or.
I'm not even going to use this footage, or I'm not going to use these photos because they're not going to do anything. I already got loads from the drinks reception. Why would I get, you know, same photos but slightly worse because there's less going on, less facial expressions, things like that. Yeah.
And I know that from a couple's perspective, they sometimes think, well, I want two of each because then
I don't want to miss anything.
Yeah, I'm just getting the maximum coverage. Then I'm not going to miss anything. Yeah, like you say. But
would you say anybody misses anything when we do photo and video together?
Well, it's never been. I don't believe they do, because I feel like it is comprehensive cover that they get still in both because of the way that we do things.
So we've just done one. How many photos are we delivering for the one that you've just finished editing?
Just 832.
So we're doing photo and video all day, just the two of us, and you're still delivering nearly 900 photos.
Culled down from, and that's you know, that's the thing. I suppose you could look at this from a perspective of, well, where can you start to make efficiencies then in the number of photographs that you take? Because from a photo and video job, because we'll both at some point have been taking photographs or at various
and
points
that burst mode on the A1 is a tricky one.
Yeah, there could be somewhere between 3,000-4,000 images.
But that's not that many, because I heard someone on a podcast the other day say that they take 12,000 at a wedding, and they said they didn't think that was that many, and my jaw nearly dropped. So,
good grief.
Yeah. Anyway,
right. Sorry. So, yeah. So, particularly as well, I don't want to start another kind of thread of conversation here, but you know, you'll have structured your packages, and you will let your couples know that they're going to receive, our terminology is a minimum of. So, and the couple that you're referring to, so theirs was 400 photographs. Yep. Okay, so they're getting double. And I know that some people are like, well, are you mad? What are you doing? Why have you then spent double the time editing?
No, if they're good ones, we just want to give them, don't we?
Absolutely, yeah. And there's, so for me, out of the 4,000 plus images that were taken that day, those 800 are the ones that I think are fantastic. And I think, you know, it's so important to show everyone, isn't it? Show everybody that was part of that day. And I think we've learned that from the past few years, because that will mean the world to the couple. And, you know, just there's so much animation and facial expressions and just laughs that are in this particular set. They're brilliant.
And a semi-naked fella on the dance floor.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was 400 to the couple, 400 just
400
of him. Yeah.
of his modelling photos.
No, but yeah, that's terrific value for money for them, but value in memories also, and just, but re-immersed back into that day, because I think it's surely only a good thing.
Yeah, and then as well, so they've got the video, so they've got the ceremony speeches, first dance, all in full.
Yeah.
In fact, no, it was a doc edit, so it's a full doc edit, so it's got all the like extra bits in between those, like, so a lot more footage from the morning and the middle of the day and the dance floor. And then they've also got a creative film, which isn't one of the longer creative films that we do, but that's because of the package that they booked. But it's a creative film that's similar to what most people's creative highlight films will be, and we've done that, and that all together.
Yeah, and I know we're going to kind of later on today we'll come together on those before we send them on to the couple, because I haven't fully watched the film yet. But what I'll say to you is that just briefly, from seeing you putting the finishing touches to it yesterday, I see the images I've just edited in your footage, and when I feel
the
like
consistency.
When you talk about consistency, colour wise, it's the same quality and it's the same moments, and one of them is still.
Yeah.
And one of them, you get to see what happens before, during, and after that image. And I just love that. Yeah. And I love being able to give that to people. That's amazing. So to answer your question, if we got married again tomorrow, or... well, I wouldn't marry anyone else, but...
Okay, let's not pull at that thread.
I would 100% love it if I could have a team that could do that and then show me those moments afterwards.
Yeah.
Where I could just see that snippet in an image, but then I get to see what happened around it as well.
Yeah, and we did try to do this under an hour. It's not happened. We could start talking about how that all ties into your brand and your message and how you're selling that to the couple. I think that is going into a completely different topic. But it's true, because what you just said is what we do. The reason it's got easier for us to sell this, the reason it's got easier for us to market our business and our branding's much more focused than it was a few years ago, is because we know exactly why a couple would want that, and we know what we're wanting to sell them. We're selling those memories in that way.
Yeah. Fist bump.
Boom.
Okay, I think we'll wrap this up for today, won't we? Thank you so much for your time. If you bear with us on this one, I promise you, at some point we'll manage less than an hour. At some point we'll get this done.
Tried stopwatches and everything.
Need a big sand timer in front of us.
The timer's running out.
But thank you so much for watching and listening. We hope that this has been useful today, that it's been interesting for you, that it's given you some food for thought. If it's something that you have considered, maybe it's just fueled your fire as to thinking, no, they should be separate and only ever...
What are these mavericks doing?
But either way, we hope, it's been of use to you. If it has, please don't forget to like and follow the podcast. And if you've got any opinions or questions about what we've discussed today, or maybe even in previous episodes, best way to get in touch with us, please, is on Instagram at Wedding Mavericks. We are shooting a couple of weddings this weekend, so on Friday as this podcast comes out, and then on Saturday also. So we're out and about and on the road for the next couple of days. And whatever you are up to, we hope it's a nice weekend for you. So take care, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye.